Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today's Monday. It is July the 14th. We had a little bit of a hiccup going live this morning. Apologize about that for a few seconds. We ran a stream all weekend long. I don't know how many hours it was, 80 hours maybe, something like that. We started on Friday morning and we just kept running it. And it was a 48-minute loop of them. We'll talk about who them is in a second. Lying to you. That's the scandal. You can actually look at all of the Epstein disclosures, the fact that it was dropped on a Sunday with an Axios leak, which, by the way, we're not hearing anything about like, oh, that was a bad leak and it wasn't supposed to come out or anything else. It all went out as a concentrated effort to minimize the impact of people who have been lying to you. Let's just assume. Let's assume that there was no Epstein criminal activity that would indict or would implicate anybody else. Let's just assume that. I don't believe it. You don't believe it, but let's just say that's the case. Fine. Then you got to own it. You can't gaslight the people that have been listening to you for years. That includes Donald Trump, who said it. That includes all of the surrogates. That includes Patel, who we've showed you 48 minutes worth of clips talking about it. Bondi, who's been talking about it since she got into office. Bongino, who's been talking about it for years. You can go back in there. It includes Julie Kelly, who told you the files were irrelevant, but in 2019 and 2020 and 22 and 23 was out there hammering it and acting like you're a conspiracy theorist. If you go ahead and say otherwise, if you try to act like it, you're fake news. If you say that there was nothing going on with Jeffrey Epstein, then you're the problem. Right up until the point when the script flipped. We cannot have idolatry and still be conservatives. You cannot worship human beings. You hold them accountable. They have to be honest. They're your politicians. This Epstein nonsense, which is problematic and may very well have nothing in it. Let's just go with the most gracious thing that there was no evidence at all. Fine. Then you have to be transparent and say, we talked to big game, we've looked into it, here's what we looked into, and we were unable to find the thing that we've been talking about. We really misled you. And we want to make sure that we regain your credibility by saying things very honestly and being very open. Not being oblique, not being obscure, not dropping a memo and hoping nobody notices behind Texas floods and little girls dying in water because of some natural event that happened in Texas. You can't do that and still be honest. You don't get to be the good guy and do that. It's the same level of scandal as the Biden administration saying that they did a great job and nobody was in danger and they pulled out of Afghanistan because they wanted to end a 20-year war when in fact they were trying to cover for a disastrous rollout of a bunch of other nonsense, like mandating the federal workforce and mandating the private workforce get a COVID vaccine that people didn't want. More information about some COVID stuff. We're going to cover some of the things that was at the Turning Point event where Tucker Carlson made some bold claims with no evidence, by the way, even if you really like what he said. We're going to catch that. We're obviously going to handle this scandal stuff and a couple other pieces of news, because over the weekend, there was what should have been a focus on an assassination attempt in Butler. There's a really interesting sort of two sides of the coin, because a man who was talking big game right after that, about 1 year ago on Wednesday of this week, 1 year ago Wednesday, a former favorite, a guy who's threatened to resign, Bongino is currently threatening to resign, had some tough words for his former colleagues in the Secret Service. And that's the same words that he should be listening to himself. So we got a message for Mr. Bongino. The current deputy director, by the way, guys, break in on the chat if it does turn out that he resigns. That was the threat over the weekend. Before we get into the weeds too deeply and into today's program, let's go ahead and say thanks to the folks that sponsor us. It's just a good reminder that there's all kinds of chaos going on in the world. The headlines can be dark. We may not have perfection. We certainly probably won't see that in our time in government, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared. And while we have relative peace right now, let's go ahead and make sure you guys hedge yourself against pending chaos. We could be one crisis away at any given time. That's why I've been doing the things that we say we do here. We prepare. I've got a 3-month emergency food supply for both me and for my wife. Obviously, my kids consume way less calories. It's the company that we trust. The 3-month emergency food kit is the best seller for a reason. It's over 2,000 calories, 3 full months worth of food. They last for 25 years if you store them properly, keep them out of direct sunlight and so on. We just filled up the closet underneath our stairs. It's the right way to go about it. If you guys want to do it right now, they've got an exclusive deal for our listeners. It's mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. You don't want to wait until a crisis hits. That's when the shelves are empty. That's when the supply chain shuts down. That's when UPS is not allowed to travel, as we saw during COVID. You guys don't want to deal with that. Make sure you're going to mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Again, mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. You can scan the QR code on there. You're going to get lightning fast shipping. It takes 2 to 3 days. That way you can fire and forget and have this solution. You don't have to be a prepper to get these things. You just have to be someone who remembers that food went out of stock, that they couldn't get eggs, you couldn't get all kinds of things. And if you want to make sure that you're not hungry and making bad decisions in haste, that's how you go do it. Check out my friends over there. There's a link in the show description. Let's get into today's program right now. All right, I want to start back. We're going to go back a little bit in time. We're going to go back 1 year ago this weekend, which we just passed, the anniversary of the shooting in Butler. It should have been something that we could remember as triumphant. Unfortunately, we have this black eye. It's like the Trump administration wants to step on rakes. I compared it this morning to somebody winning the coin toss. This is not a new analogy for those of you who follow this program, but winning the coin toss and celebrating victory like you just won and walking off into the locker rooms while you forfeit the game. Just because you got into office doesn't mean you won. Just because you grabbed the House or the Senate, it doesn't mean you won. Just because you were able to get your people through a confirmation process doesn't mean you won. You only win when you win. And that means that there are results that were promised and then you delivered those results. This should still be an ongoing concern. We've actually had a pretty good focus on what the FBI has been doing. They've been focusing on what DHS, so that's going to be ICE and HSI. We haven't heard a whole lot about the reforms going on in the Secret Service. The Secret Service that supposedly dropped the ball for Trump's security detail on July the 13th, 2024, and let the first shot happen at Butler. That broke a pane of glass that will forever be remembered, at least by my generation, and probably all the people younger than me. They will remember the fight, fight, fight. I think I've got a picture of that as well. There it is. They'll remember this moment. They'll remember that there were female Secret Service officers or HSI folks posing as Secret Service that did a poor job. They didn't secure the perimeter, and somebody got a shot off. And future assassins will look at that and say, I just have to wait until whoever it is that is protected by the Secret Service is on the road and having an away game and not ready to go and doesn't have it completely buttoned up, and I'm willing to take that risk. I will look and see if I can get within 150 yards with a semi-automatic rifle. Because 150 yards is a handgun shot for a really competent shooter, and it's a chip shot for someone who's a medium rifle shooter. There are people that are like kind of like goofy hunters that don't have like a lot of gun experience, but they got a bolt gun and they go out and they shoot a deer every once in a while. 150 yards, 135 yards. They do that every day. A lot of people sight their, my 300 Win Mag when I lived in Kansas was sighted in at 200 yards. That was the zero. Most people sight in their AR-15s between, they sight them in at 50, which means they have a flat trajectory with about a 1-inch north-south variation out to 200 yards. So that's just a point and shoot. And the amount of wind that's moving at 134 is not enough to move you from the size of a head-sized target. And as Steve Friend pointed out on Friday of this last week, that was a hit. You're seeing it on the screen right there. There's blood on the man's face. You got a hit on target. So what does all that mean? It means there was failures. We haven't seen that addressed. You don't get to claim that you've recaptured the government if you haven't actually recaptured the bureaucracy, if you haven't gotten rid of all the mid-level managers that made all the decisions. And that's rarely what goes down in these situations. Ahead of the assassination attempt 1 year ago on Donald Trump in Butler, PA, the U.S. Secret Service denied multiple requests from Mr. Trump's Secret Service detail to bolster his security apparatus during the 2024 presidential election. We covered it the other day. About 6 people got suspensions, up to about 40-something days of suspension, which means they all still work there if they want. They got a couple days on the bricks. They got an unpaid vacation. The report from the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs found that the Secret Service, quote, denied or left unfulfilled at least 10 requests from Trump's detail for, quote unquote, additional resources, including enhanced counter drone systems, which would have come into play, counter assault teams, and counter snipers. That's going to be your on the ground response and your Overwatch response. On July 13th of 2024, a 20-year-old gunman opened fire on Mr. Trump. We don't have a lot of transparency about where that guy's background is. Why the hell was he even there? What made it? I saw one profile on CBS saying that he was just a loner and he was slowly building it up. Yeah, what do people who are 20 years old who want to hide their secret life doing? Are they hanging out with domestic intel agencies? That's a possibility. Then they got away from them. How about foreign intel agencies? All of those are open to the possibility. We don't have to investigate someone who's dead. We have to investigate known associates and see if there was a broader conspiracy, which is something we kind of heard guys like Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent. That makes a lot of sense. I thought we were going to hear about that, but we're like 0 for 6 on big cases. I heard we were going to find out about the cocaine in the White House. You guys know anything about the cocaine in the White House? I haven't heard anything. How about the J5 pipe bomber, the person who did the single most terroristic act on January the 6th or January the 5th, dropping weapons of mass destruction, at least the way they term it, a pipe bomb, an indiscriminate tool that can hurt people of all types, targeted or otherwise. And nobody's worried about it. There's a $500,000 reward that nobody can collect on. Why don't we know about that? Isn't that day one priorities? We've even heard the telephone companies, the telco that said, we actually do have the data. I don't know why the FBI said we don't. Why do we not know about that? We don't know about Butler, PA. We don't know about the Epstein list. And it wasn't just that people said it in their minds and said, this is what I believe the Trump administration represents to me. The surrogates of Donald Trump during the campaign, the current deputy director and director of the FBI have told you that these are priorities. There are official statements making it so. So what do you do with that when these people haven't come clean with it? There are questions that need to be answered. You don't have a choice. There's other things going on. There's wins and losses. Sure, there's transactional business going on. No doubt. This is one of them. This is the current outrage for the Democrat Party. It's yet another reason, by the way, why this is a time to act. When your opponent is ineffective, you should be getting your strikes in. You should be getting your wins. You should be getting your points on the board. If they've pulled the goalie and they're trying to power play you and they're so feeble that they can't even overcome it, put the puck in the net. And instead, we're seeing self-inflicted rake steps, black eyes. Immigrants are in overcapacity in ICE detention facilities, said they're hungry, and they raise the quality concerns about food, says NBC. This is a crying piece talking about how they're not being fed well. You've got Democrats going out on TV and crying about people who have no right to be here, who have increased the level of crime. My wife was telling me that there's a report that that traffic in Los Angeles after hours is dramatically decreased because you don't have illegals on the road running to jobs that they're not allowed to have. What we don't see are prosecutions of the companies that are employing these illegals, by the way, and that should be a really big deal. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of squishiness on that part. The quote-unquote amnesty, not just amnesty for people in certain industries that are friendly to Donald Trump, but actually amnesty for the businesses who shouldn't have been employing illegals in the first place because it's a violation of federal law. In any case, if the Democrats are going to focus in on food quality and be sad that somebody has a toilet that is also a sink, which, by the way, every single prisoner in the United States gets that from Bureau of Prisons. It's a steel construction. It's a toilet and a sink on top of it. If you've never seen it, it's very common in prison facilities because it's very efficient. Because you don't get to go have fun or have a nice, you don't have a bidet and then a toilet and then a dual vanity sink when you're in prison. It turns out it's not really supposed to be that much fun. It's less fun than being in a Holiday Inn. Immigrants are being held in ICE facilities. In at least 7 states, they're complaining of hunger, food shortages, spoiled foods, and detainees and immigration advocates are raising the alarm here. They say that detainees have gotten sick, others have lost weight, and in one facility, an incident involves detainees reportedly broke out in part because of the food. The food problems come amid overcrowding at ICE facilities, tied the Trump administration to push quickly and ramp up immigration arrests. Well, they wouldn't have to do that if they didn't have an open border for the last several years. So I think all of this stuff is like, well, by design, yes, there's a failure. Obviously, it's a problem. You don't want to go out there and treat people inhumanely. But let's be real. This is your problem. You made this problem. We can do a quick review of the failures of the previous administration, and they are numerous, and they are voluminous, and that's what I thought we were voting to stop. What I care less about is the fact that somebody is in the same room, standing and brushing their teeth in the same place they can poop, which is the case for all Americans in all bathrooms that I've ever been in the United States. They are all bathrooms, have a toilet quite near to the sink where you brush your teeth. It's the case when you're in every hotel in America. They don't generally have separate toilet room and then also brush your teeth facility. You guys can let me know if you found other ones. Here's Debbie Wasserman Schultz, aka Ramen Noodle Hair, crying about it. She's very upset about the treatment of illegal aliens because this is their constituency. Again, this is a time to get wins on the board, not a time to be kicking yourself in the face and having bad releases and non-transparent actions, even if they're being honest, which I'm not sure they are. Here's Wasserman Schultz doing her thing.
So they essentially drink, they get their drinking water and they brush their teeth where they poop in the same unit. They bragged that they went above standards, supposedly, and gave them a 3-foot privacy wall that stretches the length inside the 32 detainee cage. A 3-foot privacy wall that stretches the length of the 3 toilets.
She's whining about it. Oh my God. They got a privacy wall. That's not that common, by the way. Do you know why people don't get privacy walls in prisons? Because all kinds of shady things happen in and around the toilet area. That's actually where you have to have holes in walls or in floors to allow plumbing in. You guys have ever roughed in a plumbing situation? You know what I'm talking about. There's a vulnerability there to be able to like hide things and sneak things in and out. How many people remembers like Shawshank Redemption? They were using the toilet to be able to block stuff. So the privacy wall is pretty uncommon. Usually you have to just poop in the open, and it's not really awesome. And a privacy wall, because these people are being sent out, not necessarily because they're in prison forever. They're in a temporary facility. They gave them a privacy wall. That's actually nicer than a lot. It's nicer than a lot of bathrooms I've been in that don't have a privacy wall between the sink and the toilet. You know, where you have to block your wife out and she can't wash her hands because you're on the toilet or something. I mean, this is not... To cry about that is fairly absurd. So this is a time to get wins on the board. It's not a time to start stacking up Epstein losses, which is what is going on currently. The other thing that the previous administration really, really blew it on, which should have been a no-brainer, was that they went after people for COVID, for doing things during an exceptional time in American history when they should have actually, looked around and read the room. They didn't care about our constituents. We told you the story the other day of Dr. Kirk Moore. He's a Utah-based plastic surgeon. He gave his patients the opportunity, after reading them the sort of side effects and letting them know what they could have and what they couldn't have, and told them, here's the story. If you want to get the shot, you get the shot. I'll give you the vaccine as it is given by the government. And if you want to get a saline shot and just have a vaccine record card that says that you got a shot, I'll give you that too. That's my understanding of the case, by the way. I may be oversimplifying it, but let me know. But as I understand it, that was the situation. And the claim against the government said was that my initial statement about this, I was asked about this about 2 years ago. And I said, who is the victim? As an FBI agent, you come to me, you say, this is the problem. Who's the victim? The government? For $28,000 in like so-called wasted vaccines that were sprayed out into the waste bin? The government is the victim for $28,000. Do you know who prosecutes $28,000 fraud, waste, and abuse case? No one. The FBI doesn't care about that. What they were doing was the same thing they did to people who were inside the FBI, which was COVID compliance. And many of you experienced that as well at your jobs, whether it was OSHA coming in and saying they were going to pull work permits and not let you do factory work or let you do industrial work or not let you show up at job sites, not even let you work in office scenarios with or without the sort of protections. Everybody had to get a shot. Why did they push it so hard? And so some of us saw that at the time and we knew there was a problem. We said, this is not right. This is not how it's supposed to work. So you'd think that in a Trump administration where like our guys are in charge and our team is winning, you would think those people would immediately be vindicated. But you'd also think that guys like Garrett O'Boyle would have their job reinstated on day one, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you think that the people who let you know, hey, by the way, the FBI is weaponized against the American people. It's not a political issue. This is wrong. We have a First Amendment liberty. You should be able to have freedom of religion. You should be able to go forward and have freedom of the press. We see a real problem here in the way it's being treated. Can you do something about that? Removed under Biden, sustained on the remove. We are now at about 14% of Garrett O'Boyle's entire FBI suspensions under Director Kash Patel. I'm factoring from the day that he began the job. My buddy Steve Friend's in the same boat. He no longer works there. He actually submitted his resignation. He got some pretty bad advice from attorneys who want you to trust the process. The same kind of process this doctor probably thought was reasonable, which is that if I'm looking out for the best interests of my clients, my patients, that is my duty. I have no duty to the government's bullshit vaccine mandate. That's not my job. My job is to look out for the people that I am entrusted with. They came to me. I have medical knowledge. My job is to give them that knowledge as best I can. Using informed consent, they tell me what they want. And if they want a shot of saline that said it was something else, whose business is that? Isn't this the same group of people that says that nobody should interrupt abortion? It should be between a woman and God and a doctor? And they want to go in and have the government sit in and tell you that you must get the shot? I mean, at the end of the day, faking a little bit of paperwork, saying that you got something that you didn't get that didn't make a difference anyway because everybody who got it still was able to get COVID. It's not like it changed the game for anyone. Except compliance and maybe some adverse reactions. Here are the guys who created the movie or the movement of died suddenly. I don't have to say I haven't actually even seen their movies. What I do know is what their focus is on. And many of us have seen these clips, and they're all very strange. Young people dying of cardiac events at ages that don't make any sense. Yes, I have a little bit of familiarity with this. I was a paramedic and licensed for about a decade. And nobody expects somebody in their 30s to have a cardiac event. You train to be able to handle all of them. But the risk profile is not people who are healthy adults in their 30s or otherwise looking healthy adults in 30s, 40s, 20s, etc. It goes into the 50s and 60s. That's when you start seeing it. And by the way, you usually see things that are comorbidities. Hypertension, morbid obesity, COPD, unhealthy lifestyle, other risk factors generally pop up. It's not the marathon runner or a guy who's on a soccer field who just collapses, holds his heart, dies right there in front of you. These guys are talking about the adverse events from the actual doses that Kirk Moore didn't administer. And this is pretty interesting. By the way, finally, and I think it was because of the Epstein pressure, so this does have a value, the Epstein pressure actually caused Pam Bondi to dismiss those charges with prejudice, so the case is over. A little bit of an example that a pressure campaign, even on social media, can work on these people because we do have a relatively populist government. Donald Trump listens to the people. Pam Bondi listens to the people. They do not like outrage from the people that they need the support from. So we don't let it up. Even if Donald Trump tells us to over on True Social, which we're going to cover that. Enjoy this little clip here. This is kind of a wild discussion. Two men telling you about some of the adverse reactions that Dr. Moore may have helped 3,000 people avoid.
Wow, look at this. This is what it's about. We want to give thanks to everyone. Everybody who's here, everybody who's out there, share this. We have to get the word out by being active, and active means participation. There's a sign right here. R.F. Kennedy wrote and said on a tweet that Dr. Moore deserved a medal. We need you to step up right now, Bobby, and do the right thing. Bring this in front of President. Pam Bondi needs to stop this. The only victim in this so-called crime is Dr. Moore. This is a victimless crime. I'm about to read something that is so salacious that I cannot believe that this is true. We got records of the batches that Dr. Moore did not administer to his patients. In batch FG3527 caused 34 deaths. 34 deaths from the shots from that batch that he did not administer. 37 disabilities, 25 life-threatening illnesses, 251 hospitalizations, 1,047 other adverse effects from that batch, that one batch alone. The silence that I hear is because this is a travesty that is happening in that courtroom right now. This man actually saved lives. My good friend and partner here, Ed Zoll, he's going to share some words about some other things that we found in these batches. Ed?
All right, I will put this video up. It's only about 3.5 minutes long, but it's a little long for the podcast, so we'll throw it up over at kyleseraphin.com if you guys want to check it out. It'll be over there. Again, you can listen to some of the adverse reactions that were listed in those batches that were not administered. And that means they were playing Russian roulette with those sort of symptoms, with those sort of potential adverse reactions, even if it's a small percentage. How many cylinders need to be in a gun before you want to load it and put it up to your head and pull the trigger? What needs to be in there? Disability, death. Maybe it's just a temporary issue. Maybe it's just Bell's palsy, where you just, like, your face droops and you look like a crazy person for a couple weeks. Is that cool? Is that what you want? Or do you want to talk to your doctor and your doctor say, look, I don't think this makes sense to you. This is what I think is going on. Here's it. Make a decision. And that person says, yeah, okay, fine, I got it. I don't want that. How do I still get to go back to work and earn a living? And he was like, well, I could always inject you with this. This is a saline shot. There's nothing in here but an inert nothing. You want that? And they're like, yeah. You know, that decision between a doctor and a person. This was the result. Again, it was dismissed. Of course, Dr. Moore was very emotional. I do believe that this is the entire purpose of being able to have any voice for some of us. We're not taking money from a campaign. We're not taking access, influence, like, oh, if you hurt their feelings, you're not going to be able to interview them again. Don't care. By the way, we got Dr. Moore's number. We'll reach out, and if he wants to be on the Sunday sit down, we'll do a long profile as long as he wants. If he wants to come down here to Texas, we'll figure out how to do that too, and we can sit and have a long conversation. This is a wild outcome, because it should have never actually been a possibility under, quote unquote, our administration.
You going in here? What are your thoughts about right now that you're seeing all this? The body of innocent Americans.
Just seeing people I haven't seen in years come over and stand with us and support. It's unbelievable.
So when you, this is why you did it, right? Because you love the people you are here.
I did what was right. You know, I didn't have anybody in mind except for just doing what was right. So it wasn't for me, it wasn't for Elena, it wasn't for kids, it wasn't for anybody, it was just doing what's right.
I mean, obviously, it's really emotional when the government comes after you and you get a break. You get a reprieve from that fate. Dr. Etam Heim had the same experience when he called me up. He was elated. He was actually a little bit drunk when that happened. I was out in Vegas. I remember getting that call while I was sitting next to Joe Altman. I mean, it's a big deal when something as large as the federal government comes after you and it goes away, especially when you've spent maybe millions of dollars in defense. It's really, really hard to imagine that your own government would come after you until it's happened. You can see it happen to other people. I promise you don't know what it's like until you felt it. Until all of your future is basically looking at, there's a mist beyond a decision point that somebody else is going to make about whether or not they're going to keep destroying you. It's terrifying. And I say that from personal experience. And I say that from talking to friends who have had the same experience. It's universal. Beyond this point, we don't know what happens. He was living that life. Now he's got a little bit of a reprieve. But now he's got to try to pick up the pieces. Can he be a doctor again? Is he going to be able to work around a bunch of colleagues that he knows stabbed him in the back and did this thing? Just awful. Absolutely atrocious. All right, we're going to read for silent, and then we're going to go and we're going to get into this sort of loyalty test. Trump versus MAGA, MAGA Epstein, blah, blah, blah. Epsteinian Kooks, by the way. It's the name and the title. That's from Mark Levin. We're starting to see a lot of these paid influence ops are actually out there, and it's paid by access. It's paid via actual money. It's paid by, time and having certain people come and boost their profile. We'll go through all of that because I think it's still relevant, and I'm not going to let it go because I don't want to. First, let me just say this. You guys can check out my friends over at Silent if you want to keep your data, if you don't want to let it go into anyone else's hands. It's Silent, slnt.com/KYLE. You'll save 15% by using my name. You'll save 15% on any of the products they have. You're going to get free shipping on qualified orders. They're not cheap products, but that's because they're well made. They're doing a good job making something that actually works. What do? They block all incoming and outgoing RF signals. They block Bluetooth. They block Wi-Fi. They block the actual signal from your phone. They block the over-the-air updates if somebody was trying to put spyware on there. They have backpacks. They have phone sleeves. They have pants that will do it if you're so inclined. They even have this. This is a sensitive site exploitation tool. Look how small this is. This will fit in your cargo pocket if you're in law enforcement or military. If you want to take something that's probably, let's say, 4.5 inches by maybe 7 inches or 8 inches, stuff it in your cargo pocket, be able to pop it out and throw laptops and phones and tablets that you are trying to exploit later because somebody has done something bad, I don't know, terrorists or whatever else it is, overseas or domestic. If you need to be able to block a signal and be able to collect evidence, you can use some of their stuff. So they make stuff for the law enforcement, they make stuff for the military, including the Air Force, and they make stuff that you can buy and carry around. I'm using the E3 everyday backpack that you see right there. I absolutely love it. It's got all of my streaming gear in there, which I want to keep safe. But the stuff that I'm in there, it's well organized, it's well thought out, it's just a really good product. It's made very, very properly. And I think possibly the stuff that's made overseas is actually more effective. And that's just between us kind of thing. It might actually be more effective and better made because they've got better sewing technology. Check out Silent. It's slnt.com/KYLE. Again, silent.com/Kyle. Save that 15%. Stay ahead of what's coming. Secure your privacy. Maybe a peace of mind when you're at the dinner table so your phone doesn't ring, or activate your Garmin watch or one of your smart watches if you have that. slnt.com/KYLE. All right, let's do MAGA fallout. Here we go. You guys ready? I think CNN actually nailed this probably pretty accurately. Epstein fallout poses a loyalty test. Is it Donald Trump or MAGA? It's President Trump versus MAGA. They love this, by the way. The left loves this. This is not something that anybody who sides on the other side, if you're part of the quote-unquote MAGA, which means you think that there should be accountability, you're still in the right. I think Trump blew it on this one. I think he blew it just as bad as Biden saying something about Afghanistan the way that he did. All right? In the days since the Trump administration released a memo about Jeffrey Epstein, which was directly at odds with quote-unquote conspiracy theories, I'm using the air quotes, they do not, pushed by the president, some of his top lieutenants, Trump's movement and most ardent supporters are in revolt. The Justice Department and the FBI released a memo last week concluding that there was no evidence that Epstein had a list of powerful men who participated in alleged underworld sex trafficking and pedophilia. It also said that the disgraced former financier died by suicide, was not murdered in his New York jail cell. Yet after years of big promises to the president's base, the memo failed to produce a smoking gun, which undercuts Trump and his team's own words. And MAGA world isn't happy. They're pitting the president's closest allies against one another. Or you could look at it more honestly, and I will. What you're pitting is your government is not allowed to lie to you with impunity and us act like it's okay. You don't get to pee on my leg and tell me that it's Gatorade, as Steve Friend said, in sort of an adaptation of that analogy. You don't get to do that. You guys all went out and said things. Your FBI director made a podcast circuit career of going on Benny Johnson and going on Stu Peters and going on Joe Pag's show and talking about this thing. Why? Because everyone knew that Bill Clinton had a close association with it, and that was a smear against all Democrats. And the assumption is that there are a lot of Democrats on this list. There's probably Republicans too. There's probably some nonpartisan people who just have money and are sickos. But we had it rubbed in our faces for anyone who thinks otherwise. Is it is it Prince Andrew that suddenly was able to start moving around? Right? We had a member of the British royal family who was disgraced. He was problematic for the crown. And he was worried about going to a third country outside of the UK where they didn't have the protections of the crown, where he could be snapped up by some sort of FBI rendition. A friendly nation that might want to take him in and look into him. I'm looking it up over here. The New York Post posted about it. A slap in your face is that guy now feels free to travel when he didn't before. He felt like he couldn't go anywhere. He's going to hang out at home. And now he's going to go and traps around the globe and everything is back to normal. That's not just a signal to Americans that it happened. It's a secondary signal to anybody that was worried that they were on an Epstein list, whatever that looked like. I am tired of hearing people try to act like there was some sort of list that Jeffrey Epstein would have had to create, that there was going to be one sort of thing that they would have pulled out. It was like, aha, we have the file, client list, printed. And that's not how investigations work. If you were going to create a list of co-conspirators, of people that would be facing indictment, it doesn't matter whether the individual that you were investigating specifically created a document called client list. You would go out there and find the financial ties and the personal connections and the witnesses who said, certain things, and the victims who could substantiate that they were victimized by this person on account of, or, at the location that this person had set up. The client list is something the FBI would have built. It's not something that Jeffrey Epstein would have built, and then you could release it or not release it. So we are getting gaslit, and I want to give you an example of some of the gaslighting that was going on. First of all, I'm just going to remind you that you're not supposed to trust people unless they bring the evidence. And what they didn't do was give us enough to say, got it. Case closed. We understand. You've been talking about it for years. You've now properly stated the things that you said. You've gone back and said the words that I said previously were absolutely false. We're seeing Kash Patel refer to it as conspiracy theories, which are things that he said. And I have a 48-minute clip of him saying it. You guys can go back in the channel. You can go back on the X account. I streamed it all damn weekend long. For an hour of small little clips, Dan Bongino, the deputy director, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, the current sitting AG, and some others, Alina Habba and others, all said that something happened, and none of them have gone forward and explained why they were wrong. That's what they owe us. They don't owe us like child pornography. They don't owe us child sexual assault material. They don't owe us anything like that. What they owed us was arrests and indictments, people that were going to be charged and prosecuted, or this is the evidence of an exhaustive evidence. This is the evidence of an exhaustive investigation. And this is the substantiation of why we were wrong previously. We've proved ourselves wrong. You've got to. If you didn't do that, what are you doing?
I'm telling you, don't trust anyone, me included. We don't bring receipts. Throw it out the window.
Okay. No receipts. It's thrown out the window. This hit on CNN, although it makes people unhappy and it makes people uncomfortable, it is precisely right. The arsonist is now trying to tell you that there was no fire. Not just that the fire's been put out, that there was no fire at all. Look at this.
Can we be clear that the Epstein controversy is a distraction of Donald Trump's own making, that he was fanning the flames of the Epstein conspiracy theory during the campaign, and so now he's essentially an arsonist pretending to be a firefighter, and there was no need for an investigation. The medical examiner had investigated the matter and found that Epstein died by suicide. The same conclusions were drawn by the Bureau of Federal Prisons. There was no need for a new investigation unless the purpose was to legitimize a conspiracy theory.
Okay. So what did Donald Trump say? By the way, I've got a little picture here. This is from Truth Social. This is Kash Patel. He said, "Thank you, Truth Social, for making me a millionaire." Of course, he meant 1 million followers, but we also kind of get the little double meaning there. Same way that he said, I wasn't great at business and the only way I was going to get a private jet was becoming FBI director. There's always a little bit of truth in these things. I know he made a lot of money from government gangsters. He made money from from putting the movie out. They made a movie version of this thing. He put out The Plot Against the President, so they made a children's book. He said, "I'm humbled to have support from the world's only true free speech platform." True Social is not a free speech platform. It is actually really not a very good app for those of you that use it over there and you think it's great. I stopped using it because it's not effective and it's an echo chamber. It's a bunch of bot trolls that are mad at Donald Trump and a bunch of people that are cheerleaders for Donald Trump. That's not discourse. Doesn't mean that the other ones are much better, but just for whatever it's worth. Here's Donald Trump's truth, we'll call it, because that's what he called it. I'm going to read you some of it. The rest of it you guys should be able to find. It's all over the place here. But Donald Trump said this over the weekend. And this is how you know that this is supposed to be over. Why? Because Trump told you it's over. He said, "What's going on with my boys and gals in some cases? They're going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration. It's the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it. All over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein." Let me just point into this. People who think that when he says who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein, that doesn't mean that Jeffrey Epstein is not dead. That's not what he's saying. If anybody, like some of these like 5D chess players make my head hurt on how dumb they are, how much they have to do human pretzel work. That's not a perfect administration. Not at all. It's decent. But there are flaws and there are errors. By the way, he just protected who? Pam Bondi. Worth knowing. We're giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, and Brennan, and the losers of the criminal Biden administration who conned the world with Russia, and 51 intelligence agents and the laptop from hell and more. For the record, Donald Trump is incorrect. The FBI did not get evidence from Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, the 51 spies who lie. Like, none of that. Like, that's not where the FBI got like, they either have the evidence or they don't. To think that they collected information that was now altered. This is him saying that there is a list, but the list is bad and it actually implicates us because it was done by liars. You better substantiate that if that's going to be the claim. That is a terrible allegation. And it's much more explosive than saying Jeffrey Epstein was doing something. What it says is that our government colluded to actually frame people. Okay, we would accept that. We would actually believe that that's probable. So now you got to go out there and prove that. That is a big claim. Again, bring evidence or don't believe it. All right, so he goes on and on. He talks about how Patel's doing a great job. Again, the left is imploding. Cash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud. So remember this, as my buddy Steve Friend said. In 2024, it was fight, fight, fight. In 2025 is why are we even talking about this creep, right? We need to focus on the election fraud of 2020, but we need to ignore the suicide of 2019. Why are people so fixated on it? It's almost like it was, in fact, something that Trump himself brought up. This is not something that you created in your mind or that I created in my mind. I didn't make this part of the campaign. He did. Enjoy.
But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. You know, they do that for danger, too, because, you know, endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
Okay. So where is it? So where is whatever it is? Where's the transparency about it? Where is the forthcoming understanding? Look, if you're wrong, if your administration is wrong, and I'm not going to play you endless clips of these guys talking about it, but if you guys want to find it, it's really easy to find. Again, I streamed it for like 90 hours. If you want to go back on the thing that you said, sometimes we're wrong. Like I told you guys, I didn't think we were going to even have an election in November. I'm thrilled that I was wrong. What did I tell you the day afterwards? I'm super excited. I was incorrect. Thank God. Own it. Own being wrong. You know, there's a lot of people that have to eat crow then, and you need to eat it publicly, and you need to say, I misunderstood, and now I know more. We didn't have that information. We were speculating from the outside, and now that we're on the inside, we see it, and here's what we see, in so much as we can tell you. Here's a little compilation of folks saying the opposite, and you don't get to just turn around and say, how dare you be talking about this creep? We're already done with him, because I say so. That's not how this works.
How is it that my father can be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? I'm trying to figure out how that's possible, right, folks? It's almost like they're trying to protect those pedophiles for some reason. I can't imagine why, right?
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
In this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
I'm not ever going to let this story go because of what I heard from a source about Bill Clinton on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not letting it go ever. Ever.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is Unbelievable.
Are you unbelievable? Because I'm not. I don't believe. That's not the same thing. You don't get to tell me that I'm wrong about this because your people said it. And then we've got this other thing that's going on right now. We've got this concern that Dan Bongino is outraged about the way that it was treated. But listen, let's just be real clear on the timeline. Here's my supposition. I'm going to break it down. This is Kyle's speculation. I'm going to go with the most gracious understanding. I never worked on this case. I would have had no reason to be exposed to it. Let's assume that all the information was destroyed. Like Seth Rich laptop style, like Hunter Biden thrown in the toilet laptop style. We got nothing. We got nothing on the guy. Okay? Fine. All right, I'll take that. When do you think Dan and Cash realized that? Because if you ask me, they knew it before they sat down with Maria Bartiromo. Why? Because they sat down there and they looked like they sat on a seat made of tacks that were stabbing them in the bum. And they were very, very uncomfortable that question would come up. And when they said it, they did the worst thing they could do. They were like, they didn't say it transparently. They tried to soft pedal this. They were like, how far can we kick this can down? Because every time they came out there, they tried to fly it out a little bit like, hey, you're not going to get what you want. It's not going to be what you think it is. He killed himself. We're going to float that out. And everyone went like, no. That was part one. Then you had Julie Kelly come out. And she's like, I don't care about the Epstein files. I think they're irrelevant. They're irrelevant. I never cared about them. That's demonstrably false. She did care about them. She called everybody who said otherwise that they were fake news. If you believe that Epstein was killed, then you were the right person. And Julie Kelly thought anybody who said otherwise was fake news. If they called you a conspiracy theorist. All right. But that didn't go over well. Bannon didn't take it. He was like, no, you can't do that. So you know where the base sits. The base sits on not that. And then you've got Cash who goes out on Rogan. Let's get the biggest audience possible. And he starts appealing to authority. You know me. You guys know me. You think I would actually let this happen? Well, what kind of answer is that? That's like you want me to make the logical deduction. There's no proof. There's no proof whatsoever. And so now you've gone out there and talked a big game. You've tried to soft pedal it. And how did they try to soft pedal it finally? They dropped a memo behind a tragedy in Texas through a left-leaning source that would immediately have MAGA people on edge and going, hey, is this fake news? Is this nonsense? And then they tried to just quietly do it. Where's the press conference? Where's the transparency? Where's the crow that you have to say, look, I was wrong. I misunderstood. I said one thing. And so that happened on a Sunday. By Wednesday, apparently, based on the reporting that we got over the weekend, Bongino didn't go back into the office. He was pissed. Was he pissed off because they did the wrong thing? Or was he pissed off because he knew that his audience base was not going to accept it and he had no future going back and he was going to have to answer questions about it? Are there tons of people that agree with Bongino forever? Of course. But it's not courageous to put your finger up in the air, figure out which way the wind is blowing, and get behind the right thing. They knew where it was going to go. And the best part of it is that the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General, already told us everything we need to know about this situation. The Deputy Attorney General is a person named Todd Blanche, right? I can't even get this thing on the screen, so I'm just going to actually make it the entirety of the screen, if you will. Watch this. Folks, this is the DAG. This is the number 2 over at DOJ. The number 2 at DOJ is the person that appoints the deputy director and has much more hands-on approach and runs essentially the FBI actually reports up that way. Certainly the deputy director of the FBI reports to the DAG that way. So has dual boss. Here's what Todd Blanche said. This was on July the 11th. I worked closely with FBI Director Kash Patel and FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino on the joint FBI DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. All of us signed off on the contents of the memo and the conclusions stated in the memo. The suggestion by anyone that there was any daylight between the FBI and DOJ leadership on this memo composition and its release is patently false. That's an official statement from the official person who is in charge. And that happened on the 11th. That was 3 days ago. The memo was released on the Sunday before. It was released on the 3rd or the 4th, right? 4th, maybe 5th. I don't know. Then the number starts stacking up. 5 days after it was released, 4 days after it was released, you get the outrage. So spare me with that. And now the concentrated cover-up happens, which is that the media people are going to cover for the media guy, the government people are going to cover for the government guy, and nobody has to cover for Pam Bondi because Donald Trump already said she's in. That's it. The turning point piece, you've got Megyn Kelly, who loves Dan Bongino, Charlie Kirk, who's also trying to do the same thing. They all want to go ahead and insulate Trump. So they're trying to keep all three of these people in the administration. But at the end of the day, people are going to look over and say, you said it on podcasts for years. I can show you exactly what you said. You lied to us. So what are we going to do with you?
Reporting is Bongino. It's Bongino or Bondi. He's not.
Who would you guys prefer, Bongino or Bondi? Okay, 7,000 to 0.
They want Dan. Of course, Dan. You know why? Because Dan understands MAGA. Dan's part of the MAGA movement. Dan's been an important piece of it and a mouthpiece for like really important ideas and an advocate and a fierce warrior. He's been in the trenches. I mean, with all due respect to Pam Bondi, she's been in Florida. She represented the president. It's nice. But do you think she really gets MAGA? I don't think so. She wouldn't have behaved this way if she did. And now it's a time for choosing. It's a time.
Don't give me that. Don't act like the guy wasn't there. This is January 4th, 2024. He did a whole thing. The shocking Epstein files reveal the truth. Don't miss my Rumble show. Tune in now. We're going to give you all the things. I'm not going to let this go, right? Laura Ingraham, Fox News, stepped up, same event, wanted to go out there and run cover, was out there trying to push it. There is nothing more, quote unquote, MAGA-based than a turning point event, I would say. I've been at them. I've been at them and spoken at one. And it is very, very like whatever the MAGA thing is. It's not conservative, like women dressing scandalously. There's all kinds of like celebration and pomp and circumstance. It's bred in circuses for sure. But it is whatever MAGA is. You can't deny that. Here's Laura Ingraham getting booed when she tries to say what she's saying, which is that she's trying to say that the Epstein files were handled well and that the drop was no big deal. She's trying to, and then she realizes. You can tell her. She's not dumb. Laura Ingraham is actually really bright. Listen to her. Try to spin this.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation. Clap. Okay, I told you to clap. You guys aren't listening. I'm not going to grade you on a curve. So I was going to get to that. How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
Okay, they're not satisfied. They told you. What do they want? They want you to give them a villain. They want you to give you something. The only way that you don't give them a villain and you don't tell them what's going on is you actually are transparent and you show something that convinces people that all the things you said previously were a lie. And that you're not being leaned on by an intel service and you're not being blackmailed. You've set up a very difficult bar. I didn't set this bar up. The people that are out there trying to say otherwise set this thing up. And that's why Tucker Carlson got a huge response by just mentioning the name Israel, because there's a massive move right now to claim that Israel is actually wagging the United States, which is absurd. But there are a couple of really weird things about Israel that we have to say. We mentioned it on Friday with Steve Friend. I regularly hear about how Israel is our closest ally from politicians. But there is no way that you can convince me of that because I worked in counterintelligence and we actively have counterintelligence cases against not like Israelis, but against the Israeli government and intel services that actively are out there trying to steal and infiltrate U.S. government operations. That's a thing. The Israelis do that. Nobody would deny it. They were a frenemy at best. They may align with us all the time, but at the end of the day, they're not in the Five Eyes. They don't get access to our most sensitive stuff. So you can't tell me they're our closest allies. I know for a fact they're not. And it's really weird to hear people say certain things or saying defense of Israel is a cause close to your heart, like you heard Bongino say. Nobody's prompting you to say this weird stuff. That's not how Americans talk. I know a lot of patriotic people who are willing to go put bodies in the ground for this country and have. I got friends who are Green Berets. I've got friends who are SEALs. I've got friends that are MARSOC guys, right? I've got friends who have gone out there and done the mission at the pointiest end of the pointy spear. And of course, I've met people who are regular military, whether they be combat arms or not. Guys out there in the infantry, Marine grunts who are out there getting the job done. I've never heard one of them, not one person has ever told me, be like, hey man, when you're thinking about things at night and you're worried, like what's going to happen in this world? They'd be like, we're not going to defend Israel enough. That's never once been said to me as a grown man who's almost 44 years old. Nobody's ever said that to me. That's a crazy thing. If you said it to me, I would look at you and be like, bro, are you drunk? Are you high? What's wrong with you? Who talks like that in America? I had a freaking partner who was Israeli, and I rode with him for 6 months on an ambulance. We talked all the time in the downtime. Not once did he tell me the most important priority for me is the defense of Israel. And he was a former IDF medic. What the hell are you talking about? And these people say weird stuff. So that's why Tucker Carlson got this big cheer. It's worth knowing that this is where MAGA is sitting, and this is where that id of the Republican Party is at. They don't trust you because you have not established trust. Your bona fides are not good enough. Your thug resume of all the things that you've done are not good enough when you do something that is completely illogical. And Tucker Carlson tapped into that. Whether it's honest or otherwise is irrelevant to me. He's saying something that people want to hear.
Not acceptable. And I think the real answer is Jeffrey Epstein was working on behalf of intel services, probably not American. And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that. There's nothing anti-Semitic about saying that. There's nothing even anti-Israel about saying that. I've spent my entire life pretty much in Washington, where I knew and loved a number of people, including one very close person who worked at CIA. That has never prohibited me from saying, I think the CIA has done some horrible things, murdered a bunch of people, participated in the murder of a sitting U.S. president. It's got a whole trail of crimes. That doesn't make me a disloyal American. It doesn't make me anti-American in any sense. I was born.
Yeah. It doesn't make you disloyal. It makes you a person who asks reasonable questions. It makes you say, why are people talking like this? You can be a noticer. Kind of like I had somebody over the weekend suddenly notice that whenever they mention FBI whistleblowers, my name doesn't get to be put in there. It doesn't matter even if it's people that are friendly to me. It's even if it's people that use me as a source of information and will ping accuracy against me. They won't say my name anymore. Why is that? Because, some things are off limits. You're going to lose access. You're going to upset certain people. Apparently, you can't talk about the fact that Jeffrey Epstein did certain things, showed up in a completely illogical stratospheric, push into wealth and wealth management. And yeah, maybe he's got a bunch of ties to Israel. You can see them. Les Wexner, it's been out there, right? He got handed things that don't make sense. He got paid feed structures that don't make sense. He was unbelievably successful in a way that is completely illogical. Maybe he's the great American success story and also a pedophile. Maybe. Or maybe not. The burden is now on the people who said that he is a pedophilic blackmail ring runner. And by the way, you notice Tucker Carlson, no evidence cited, none. Feelings, possibly correct, logical leaps that are not illogical at all, and you're allowed to make them. But a lot of people have been drumming up all this hate without any of the evidence. So the evidence is what's necessary, and that's what a transparent organization or administration would do. You come out, if you go out and say that this is the case, look, I've told this before, but I'll say it one more time. My proudest moment, and I actually mean this, on FBI duty, my proudest thing that I did was disprove an allegation of pedophilic child sexual exploitation. Because we could have ruined a man's life by indicting him without all the facts. And it took a couple of months to actually unseal records from 2004 or 2005. The details are a little foggy to me right now. But there was an allegation, and a really credible one, that there was a man in Las Cruces, New Mexico, who had violated his duty to notify the local sheriff when he was traveling, left the country, and was hanging out with underage children despite being a convicted sex offender. And that he was handing out bicycles, and he was doing this thing. There was all these stories that were out there on mainstream media talking about what a great guy he was, and he ran this bicycle charity, and he was giving bikes to little kids. And at the same time, nobody mentioned that he was using a false name, that he was traveling under an assumed identity, that he was not the guy that he proclaimed, and that he actually had a child sexual offense, that he was a listed and categorized sex offender. And it looked really bad, really bad. And we dug it up, and we got the records unsealed, and we went to the original judge, and we had them open up the records only to find out one thing. That one thing was really specific. the details of his case, why he was considered a sex offender. Because without the sex offender piece, it didn't all make sense. It actually was nothing. Then it was just a guy doing a nice thing. And the sex offender piece was he was found with something like a dozen images of child pornography back in the days when Napster was a thing and people used to download like whole folders and it would have like maybe like, 3/4 of a gigabyte worth of pictures and videos because everything was low res back then in the early 2000s. And he probably didn't even know that the child sexual stuff was on his computer. He had a search warrant executed by federal authorities. They went in and took all of his computers, but they didn't take the one computer that actually did have the thing that he ended up pleading guilty to. And he felt so bad about what had happened, and he felt so guilty that his wife thought he was a creep and a pedophile that he came clean to her, said, I download a lot of pornography, I spend a bunch of time with it, and I'm going to go turn myself in and throw myself at the mercy of the court, which he did. He got 6 months probation, 0 jail time, had to register under the statute as a sex offender, and had the record sealed, and never once had anything to do with it. And instead of sitting there and touching himself, he touched bicycles and brought them to little kids as penance for his whole life. And we could have ruined that man's life with false allegations, with even just with a casual indictment of which there was probable cause to believe that he had been involved in that until we did the work. So sometimes you prove yourself wrong. And when you do, you own it. And you wear that like a badge of honor of doing like the right thing because you did it right. So you just do that and you own that. And that is your consolation. It's like, I believe this one thing. I believe differently because I'm not a person that gets invested in the outcome. I get invested in the evidence and doing the right thing. It's principles over people or whatever else I said in the past. God forbid we get locked into our ideas and go after innocent people or go after people who are not actually guilty of the thing that we want to believe they are because it's more convenient to us or political. Pam Bondi has moved on from this, by the way. She has full protection. She did this press conference the other day. She's back to doing Fox. She's back to up there saying things that are obviously not true. You think Pam Bondi knows a bunch of cops that have been killed? There's like 150 cops on any given year that are killed or die in the line of duty, whether it be traffic accidents or gunfire. There's not that many of them that knew Pam Bondi for her to say, I had lots of friends that were killed. Spare me the lies. She is a crap actress. She is not that bright. She's clearly not very good at doing this, but she's got the protection of Donald Trump and Susie Wiles behind. She's a Ballard Partner alumni. She's good to go. Kash Patel, he's 100% loyal to Trump-ish, but more importantly, to his job. He wants to be in that job. He wanted to be a big shot. He is a big shot. Dan Bongino is the one who's going to lose the credibility, and he's not a Senate confirmation, so it's easy to replace him. They could replace Bongino tomorrow if he resigns, and they will. So we'll find out if that happens. He had some big words for Secret Service. It'll be interesting because he didn't do the thing that he said that you should do, which is that when you know the truth, you come forward with it and you take the consequences. I know a little something about doing that. So do some of my friends. For a guy who actually put my name out there in the world, who begged for whistleblowers to come forward, to not be the guy that does it, to not live by his own principles, should tell you everything you need to know about Dan Bongino. Talks a big game, doesn't have it. When the chips fall down, he didn't have the cards. And we already got to see that. It's too late. Here's Pam Bondi showing you that she's safe.
Officers are prepared for all the dangerous encounters that you face. Earlier, I was saying when I was a state prosecutor, I've lost a lot of friends. I was there for 18 years. I was felony bureau chief trying hundreds of cases, but I lost a lot of friends who are police officers. This facility behind us today will save the lives of police officers. And
okay, maybe it'll save some police officers' lives, but there's no way that you lost a lot of friends. How many is a lot? I've lost a couple of friends, and I was in the military during the global war on terror. Some of you lost a lot of friends. I've got a buddy that goes and sleeps on the ground at Arlington Cemetery because he's got a lot of friends that are buried there. Like more friends in the ground than he has on the earth. That's a lot of friends. How many friends does Pam Bondi have? She's a convenient liar. She's a mediocre politician. She probably shouldn't be at the national level. She's got the right friends. She's willing to do whatever it takes. Give me a break. Give me a freaking break with that nonsense. But I do want to play you this because we're on the other side. On July the 16th, this podcast came from the Dan Bongino Show, 2287. You guys can look it up yourself. You can go watch the episode. Big time talk, tough words for Secret Service people who knew what happened at Butler, who are part of that same sort of story here. The review shows that they didn't get their security detail. They didn't get the extra stuff. Well, it turns out you could go and lose your job over it. You could try to do best you can. This is where the big tough guy comes in and talks and tells you something that he's willing to say for someone else to do and doesn't do himself. By the way, he always tries to tout the fact that he left his job. Dan always wanted to be a media guy, just like he always wanted to be in politics, which is why he's sitting at the FBI as far as I estimate. He's going to have an awful lot of difficulty establishing credibility after saying things like this and not doing what you'd expect the person that everybody listened to for years to do. Didn't you all think? And let me just leave you with this thought too before we play this. Bondi is a multimillionaire. Patel is a multimillionaire. Dan is a big-time multimillionaire. He is the biggest net worth of those three. What is the point of FU money if you don't know how to say FU when the time comes? What is the point? If you can afford to have principles and you don't, what's the purpose of all that money? What's the purpose of putting you there? Here's a tough guy talking and not living up to it. Here you go. He can't live up to it at this point, by the way. It's too late. He already waited to see what the audience would say. And now he's responding to the audience, not to the principal. Quote me on that.
Nobody has resigned over this. No one. I have an important message now, too. This is directed at the people who know. The people who know about the fights to get more assets for President Trump. The people who know about his elevated threat level. The people who know that the security footprint wasn't adequate to keep this man alive and safe. I'm asking you as a friend, as a former colleague. Life is calling, man. It's time to pick up the phone. Big people do big things. Small people do small things. The courageous are going to speak out. I don't want to hear lectures about, oh, my pension and my... I resigned and walked away from my job, and there was no guarantee anything was ever going to come out of it because I believed in something bigger, so you could spare me the lectures. You'll probably get whistleblower protection. Go get yourself a lawyer and speak out now. You're running out of time. Life's calling, man. Pick up the phone. I asked a bunch of open questions yesterday. There are still no answers to. Shockingly, no one has spoken out yet. It's now been a couple of days. It is time to speak up. You are running out of time. There are going to be massive changes coming up if this government changes hands, as I hope it does, from this tyrant in charge now to President Trump. And somebody's going to have to answer, so you damn well better speak up now. I'm telling you for a fact, media people, don't get on the wrong side of this. This man is lying. And to those people who know, it is time for you to speak up. You are running out of time to do the right thing. Life's calling. Pick the phone up. Big people do big things. This man's a small person doing a small thing, and he is absolutely lying here. Check this out. I am telling you this is a lie. And if people would just speak up, life is calling.
Pick up the phone. Yeah. For all of you guys debating Bongino's net worth, go look into it. You can go look it up. It's actually not that hard. He was offered a stake in Rumble to go over and take his podcast over there after the IPO. Generational wealth. He used that word as well. It doesn't matter if it's $80 million or $150 million. It's more money than any of those other two have, for sure, by a lot. When he was on Timcast, he was telling people he took a freaking private jet everywhere because he couldn't afford to miss a show. And based on the numbers he told me, he was charging like $12,000, maybe $15,000 an ad. And he does, what, 5 or 6 of those every show, 5 days a week, 2,000 episodes. I don't know how many he's been doing it for, but he's been doing that for a long time. They made a ton of money on that show. Talking a bunch of bullshit. Talking it up. The Epstein files reveal the shocking truth. Well, what they did reveal was that you didn't have character, guy. We all got to see that because you could have reinstated Garrett O'Boyle on day one. He went out and said that Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend were wronged and the new media never paid attention to them. That was in February. He went on the job 3 days late after that show, by the way. He called Steve Friend and offered him a job and then never called him again once he got to D.C. because he got captured up. He got read, whatever the BS was. And as I said on a meme this weekend, the same guy that was railing against the FBI and has also come out and told us that they were not honest, that they were not credible, they were not a reputable organization, is the same guy that listened to that organization about what was wrong with Garrett, Steve, me, Phil, etc. He took the word of people that he already said was dishonest, and he said they were dishonest for years. So shame on him. It's too late to do the right thing as far as I'm concerned. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the arc looks like. That's what I got for you guys today. I do have a little bit of fun. This is an interesting thing that I heard. It's something that I hadn't considered. I want to be fair. I know we have a pretty decent percentage of our audience fits into the boomer category, the generation. I'm probably not talking about all of you. I don't think I'm talking about many of you. But there is something interesting about the generation, the baby boomer generation. My parents are baby boomers. They're baby boomers I obviously love, so don't take this as a complete generalization. But I found this fascinating. This man is a baby boomer. He's talking about baby boomer wealth, and this does seem to be there's something specific that happened during the boomer generation, and I don't know what it is, but an awful lot of them are still in politics, and it does kind of like illuminate something. And then I've got something funny as usual to kind of go out, and it actually is talking about boomers and how we're all going to end up like that. So everybody ends up being the old people on the block that get a lot of the crap. Just stand by. I'm not just banging on one group alone. So here we go.
The average 70-year-old is 72% wealthier than they were 40 years ago. The average 40-year-old is 24% less wealthy. For the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't as wealthy as his or her parents were at 30, which in my opinion is a fundamental breakdown in the compact we have between us and America. The largest capital transfer in history happens every year. It's called Social Security. The tax code's gone from 400 pages to 4,000, and those 3,600 pages aren't there to help the young and the middle class. They're to transfer money from people your age to my age. And when that happens, it creates so much shame and rage that every opportunistic infection turns into full-blown pneumonia. So whether it's Me Too, or the Black Lives Matter, or some of the anti-Israel protests on campus, I'm not saying those aren't righteous movements, but there's fuel poured on everything because I think young people are just pissed off.
You guys want to know the best part of our morning chat is that my mother joins in and objected to being a baby boomer, says she's not a baby boomer, only to realize that in fact she's a baby boomer. What's more baby boomer than claiming not to be a boomer when you are a boomer? All right, I'm not just banging on you guys. This is some lib idiot lady who's talking about how one day we'll all be that thing. One day we're all going to be like the boomers are, but we'll all have some different standard because everybody lives under one generation, and then as things change, you end up being held to a different account. This one is actually really funny only because I just think that AI is going to kill us all. So here's a goofball lady, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
I think we need to start being easier on boomers. Yeah, sure, they're a little bigoted, but that's going to happen to us eventually. We don't think it will, but it will. And it's not going to be like transphobic or homophobic or anything like that. We're better than that, but it's going to be like AI phobic. Yeah, like our grandkids are going to bring home like a fucking projector with feelings. And we're going to have to try and get along with that. They're going to be like, this is my partner, Zygort. He lives in the cloud. And we're going to be like, we just didn't used to mix like that. You know, we didn't used to fuck the AI. And we're going to have to be like, but love is love. And then they're like, oh my God, Grandma always said love is love. But now that he's glitching in 8K, she's turned into a complete data phobe or something. I don't know. Like, maybe we just be a little easier on them now. I think we...
It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Like the video, share it with somebody. If you're over on YouTube, thanks so much. I see all of you guys. I appreciate all of you over on YouTube. Yes, I look over to the screen where you're actually at. Thanks for joining our program this morning. It's youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. You guys are really good with the like button. I appreciate it. Make sure you do share it with a friend if you would. On Locals is where we share all of the links or any articles that are quoted on any given day. You can join us there, free or paid. It's KyleSeraphin.com. And lastly, if you want to share the show with a friend on Spotify, if they're just an audio and maybe a sometimes video listener, they can do so at KyleSeraphinShow.com. We just grabbed a little vanity tag and you can share it really easily. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you guys are listening. We're going to continue to hammer on the things that I think are accurate. We're going to push the Trump administration to get outcomes that we want. And that just needs to be honesty. Even if that honesty is something we don't like, let's make sure that they do that. That's our only thing we can do with new media. So we'll continue to do that. It is one thing that you know that the legacy media will not do. They bend over backwards to maintain access. I'm not beholden to anyone except the audience. Our sponsors don't ever tell us what we can or can't say. If they want to leave, then they got to leave. So that's it. We really appreciate all of you guys. God bless you. I hope you have a fantastic day. I'm not going to do another spam long-term stream again, but maybe I will in the future, just not today. Have a great one. Talk to you all soon. God bless you. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.